Hello and welcome to Geek Fuel, this month's review of last month's featured Geek Fuel game. I'm TheBrokeGameGirl, and before I get started, since this is the first episode, I feel that it's my responsibility to explain which criteria I'm going to be using to evaluate all of the games I review on this show. I mean, this is just one person's opinion, so why should you care? Unless you understand how I'm judging this game against all of the other countless video games in existence. So here's a quick rundown of what I look at in a game. When I play a video game, there are three key elements that I'm looking at: design, gameplay, and story, in that particular order. Now don't get me wrong, I love when a video game tells an amazing story. I consider video games to be a wholly unique storytelling medium, but I'm placing design and gameplay above it, and I'll tell you why. Design is how a game informs you, the player, about the world in which it exists. It's super important that the design give the player everything they need in order to navigate the challenges that the game will be presenting to them. That means including critical information in the heads-up display, having easy-to-read fonts for any on-screen text, and a color palette that isn't going to give players migraines after 20 minutes into the game. Gameplay is important because it's what allows the player to interact with the game. This category is going to include a lot of the basics, such as the physical laws of the game world, for instance, gravity, difficulty, input response time, and the flow of the game. Pretty much all of the stuff the player uses to get from the beginning to endgame. Gameplay can be the deciding factor between having fun and rage quitting. Now I'm putting story last on this list, and it's not because I don't think that story is important. Like I said, I love story-driven games. I just think that, for all the reasons that I gave before, design and gameplay are more important. There have been so many games with fantastic stories that I've never finished, because either the design or the gameplay failed to keep me engaged enough to keep playing. On the other side of the coin, there are tons of games that don't even need a story to be engaging. But when developers do decide to put a story into their game, half-assing it is not going to cut it with this generation of gamers. We want stories that keep us interested, stories that aren't one-dimensional. We want a game story to transport us, to immerse us in the world that the designers created, and that's not going to happen if the player keeps falling into plot holes. Right about now you might be thinking, hey, Game Girl, what about games without an obvious story? It wouldn't be fair to judge them under the same criteria. That would be true. But the answer I have for you, my friends, is concept. Even the simplest of games has a concept or set of rules that dictate the relationship between the player's character and other design elements that the game is trying to convey. Whether that relationship is save the world or destroy that pixel before it destroys you, every game has an intended concept. And if a game has the design and gameplay to support that concept, it can be just as good as any game with a complex plot. Now that that's out of the way, did I say quick rundown? Lol. Let's get on with this month's review of Ninja Pizza Girl. Let me tell you, when I unboxed Ninja Pizza Girl, I did not have the highest expectations. The description certainly didn't inspire much confidence.
In a world where slums teeter on the top of skyscrapers, where powerful megacorporations exploit the poor, and where quality pizza is hard to come by, Gemma, spelling error no capital G, must fight to keep her ideals, her family, and their business intact in the face of the most merciless enemies known to any teenage girl, other teenagers.
But what I found was, despite some pretty clear flaws, a pretty solid video game. Ninja Pizza Girl is a runner platformer that follows the story of teenage ninja-in-training / pizza delivery girl, Gemma, and her family's pizza restaurant, Pizzarific Pizza. Like I said, the game has some flaws, but most of my issues are story-related choices and, for the most part, ignorable. In the story, Gemma is working as a delivery girl to help keep her father's pizza restaurant afloat in the midst of a world filled with pizza ninja bullies that work for a rival big business pizza company. When you really look at the story of the game, it's more morality play than anything else. Nice girl versus bullies, family shop versus big business. It's all your basic David v. Goliath, nothing too in-depth here, much like many girls' games on the market. I can understand why games that are, quote, made for girls end up falling more into this category of uncomplicated story, but I personally find it to be a bit insulting because it seems like that's the only kind of game that developers are making for this particular demographic. Maybe it's just me, but I'd really like to see more diversity and depth for all gamers. That said, the story was a little difficult for me to get into, and I'm not saying that it's a bad story. It was because the design choices weren't cohesive enough to fully support the story in the way that it needed. However, there are actually a lot of design elements in Ninja Pizza Girl, from the hidden positive affirmations in the dystopian backgrounds of the levels, to the directional indicators that help you navigate the world, that I actually really liked. But there were a lot of things that were never really explained, or at least not early enough for them to make sense, that pulled me right out of the experience, and I found myself asking too many questions, like, why are there so many neon cubes on these rooftops, and what are they? Or, why don't any of these pizza companies have drones that just air deliver the pizza? Or, who in the world would design a pizza delivery bag that sits vertically against the body? I mean, you are just asking for a mess at that point. The characters themselves look to be about what you've probably come to expect from an indie game. A little simple, a little boxy, but it's totally offset by the cutscene artwork, which was a very clever way to handle that information without ruining the tempo of the game. But what I really enjoyed about the design of Ninja Pizza Girl was the music. My sweet tea and biscuits was the music good. It was paired perfectly with the gameplay and encompassed the urgency and emotion of every level. I really doubt this game would be half as good without its amazing soundtrack. But what really made this game shine was the gameplay itself. First off, the physics are incredibly pleasing, and don't take away from the pace of the game at all, which is essential to any kind of runner. One particularly nice thing that the engineers did was to incorporate a landing mechanic, which keeps the player actively involved or suffer from time lost. And I really like that there were multiple choices for the route you can take, and even how to handle obstacles. The game also doesn't barrage you with tutorials at first, which I feel has been a problem with a lot of games dating back to the inception of 3D graphics. Instead, Ninja Pizza Girl gives you information as you need to learn it. You don't learn to wall jump until you need to travel vertically. You don't learn to fight until you first encounter rival ninjas. That landing thing I talked about? You don't learn it until you get to a jump that's big enough to warrant it. The game's not trying to teach you everything at once or stopping every 10 seconds to teach you something new, both of which can leave the player with an overwhelming amount of information. How death is handled in Ninja Pizza Girl is another thing that I thought was pretty cool. Instead of your basic, you died, it's been replaced by literal crippling embarrassment, which makes sense for the story. And it's possible to shake it off and continue from the same spot, with the only penalty being time lost. Another great feature in Ninja Pizza Girl is the custom difficulty setting. You get your standard difficulties, sure, but what if you're having trouble with the bullies, or maybe you're getting through your deliveries way too fast? You can actually adjust certain aspects of the game without altering the difficulty of other elements, so you end up with the gaming experience that suits you best. And it also means that everyone gets the same opportunity to advance the story. The last thing I want to mention is more of an Easter egg than anything else, but I think it was a nice touch. In the TLC section of the menu, which is where Gemma can recharge, there are a bunch of items that you can get for her. This includes some pretty basic, kind of stereotypical stuff like bubble bath and chocolates, but if you scroll past the generic items, there are a bunch of cartridge games that you can purchase for Gemma to blow off some steam. Now at first, I assumed these were dummy games, something the designers threw in for laughs. That was until I looked closer and noticed that each game has a tiny URL printed on the cartridge. Imagine my joy and surprise when I typed every one of them into my browser to discover that all of them were real and ready-to-play games in existence. That being said, Ninja Pizza Girl was a pretty decent game once I looked past its rougher edges, and I truly had a good time playing it and discovering all that it has to offer, from its laughable moments to the fast-paced gameplay. Is it my favorite game? Clearly not. But overall, I still give Ninja Pizza Girl a surprising 6.8 out of 10. Thanks for watching this month's Geek Fuel'd. If you enjoyed it, you might want to check out some of the other programming on this channel, and be sure to like the video. If you want to keep updated on new content, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to ring that notification bell. I'll see you for next month's Geek Fuel'd. Bye!